Time doesn't erase murder. It just hides it better. They said the case was closed. They said no one was watching. But someone always is. This is Santana True Crime.
Welcome to Santana True Crime. Tonight's episode dives into a disturbing chapter of American history that feels eerily familiar in today's headlines. Long before Jeffrey Epstein and his private island became a global story, there was another island, remote, hidden in Lake Michigan, where young boys were brought under the promise of mentorship, but instead became victims of exploitation within a network protected by power and privilege. This is the story of North Fox Island, a case involving wealthy elites, a nationwide trafficking network that operated through the mail, and possible connections to one of the most haunting unsolved child murders in recent history. Joining me tonight is Dr. David Hayes, a forensic psychologist, criminologist, and cold case consultant who has worked with law enforcement and families. Dr. Hayes has spent years studying cases like this and recently published an article breaking down the North Fox Island operation, its connections, and what it reveals about how systems of power can shield predatory behavior. Dr. Hayes, welcome to the show. All right. Welcome to Santana True Crime. Dr. David, thank you for joining us again.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
So, David, when I saw this article, the first thing that popped in my head is everything that's going on with Jeffrey Epstein, how, like we've said off air before, this has been happening for centuries, and now it almost seems mainstream, and people are really starting to have this reality check of how big of an issue this is.
Right.
When did you first learn about this island in Michigan? And can you bring us in with some history on it?
Sure. So I first ran across it when I was younger. It was a thing that was happening in the 1970s in Michigan, of course, and it became closely tied to the Oakland County Child Killer case, that unsolved serial murder case from 1975. There's no real direct correlation to it, but it was kind of exposed all at the same time. And that's gone on with this. But North Fox Island is in Lake Michigan, and it's by Traverse City, so it's like the northern tip of the mitten. And it's a pretty secluded island. You can only get to it via airplane. I mean, you can possibly, of course, by boat as well, but the most expedient way is via airplane. And it was purchased in 1960 by a man named Frank Sheldon. And Frank Sheldon was a wealthy individual. The family had money. Most of that money was made in the automobile business, of course. And when he bought the island, he partnered with a few people and turned it into Brother Paul's Children's Mission. And the point of Brother Paul's Children's Mission, it was a Catholic-sponsored mission for young boys to receive mentorship from men to learn about things, underprivileged young boys, that is, and they would learn about camping and hiking and becoming a man, and essentially like a big brother sort of organization. What it was really a front for was to take these underprivileged young men from Michigan, fly them out to the island, and essentially sex traffic them to other wealthy individuals, and some not so wealthy individuals as well that we'll get into. At the same time, they were making child sexual assault material there. So films, photographs, other things that were largely sent via large mail order networks. So what we're left with is an island dedicated to the sexual exploitation of children that was owned by an incredibly wealthy person that has really escaped justice, in a nutshell.
So was this sponsored by the Catholic Church, or were they just calling it that?
Well, that's a tough thing. So there was a sister organization in well, a brother, I don't know, sister organization, I suppose you would call it, in Tennessee, that was actually run by Catholic priests that were, they were in touch with one another. They would trade material, they would trade technique and children, and the same parent company owned them both. So essentially, it was owned by a parent company, these missions, and but they were endorsed not by the Vatican, not by like large national or statewide Catholic organizations, but your local parish priest would, be involved, and that would be the sort of the gravitas, or the I'm looking for a word, the sounds very cliche, but the street cred that the young boys mission would need to look like it was a valid place to send your children.
And that makes sense. It almost
Mhm.
sounds like a Boy Scout camp or a
Yep.
one of those problem child camping, schools where they take the
Right.
kids out in the woods and, y like you said, teach them to be a man. We're gonna put discipline in them, and then once you get them
Right.
on the island, they don't have any place to go.
No, they
And
don't, and they wouldn't go anywhere, since how sexual assault and works. I'm going to say it works so well for the perpetrator, because most of the time the victims are, one, too ashamed to say anything. And in the case of children, it's incredibly easy for these pederasts and these group of awful human beings to convince these kids that it's their fault that they're there anyway, and this is something that they have to go through and pay for. Or, at the most, they'll even threaten their family. Like, if you tell anyone, your mother's going to hate you. Your dad's gone. You don't have a dad. I'm all you got. And it's insidious how it works.
were they using religion once the boys got on the island? Were they saying that this was what God wants, or
Not from all accounts. By the time when they got to the island, it was just, fun time camping until it was special time. And so the kids really had, like, the boys had the run of the place. They met each other. They would go out and play. They would hike and camp. But when you were called in to do something, you were doing something.
and how long were they at this camp for?
So reports vary. There's a few survivors that were talking many years ago, and it wasn't like an entire summer. They would be up for a week or two, and they would continue to go back and forth. And a lot of them were being groomed to work the camp later on. And it persisted for a solid 5 or 6 years before it was found out. And oddly enough, uh, shared Sheldon partnered with a Michigan school teacher, of course it's gym teacher, stereotypical, named Gerald Richards, who was also a traveling birthday party magician, which is the creepiest thing ever.
Oh,
And he
yeah.
was, of course, a pederast and a pedophile. And so they met. There's all right. It's getting a little complicated here, so I want to backtrack a little bit. There's this very large network at the time, run by Newsletter and Magazine, of called the Man Boy Love Association, which essentially was a philosophy that felt that men should be able to engage in what they would call consensual sex with young boys. And it's terrible, of course, but the way they organized was through magazines, and they would talk to one another through classified ads. And a lot of it started in the traditional sex shops and bookstores at the time. And so there would be small special areas where those people knew where to go, and they would frequent those areas, and then they would meet each other through classifieds and through the ad section. And that's where Sheldon met Richards, through the Man Boy Love magazine. I have the title here. One moment. They called the magazine Better Life Monthly. And so Richards and Sheldon would correspond for a while. And then Richards effectively functioned as Sheldon's recruiter, since he had access via school systems to disadvantaged young boys. And it was a simple task to convince the single parent or the grandparent or the
Right.
foster parents, hey, we're gonna take them, and we're gonna give them some direction in life.
And from reading your article, what's so scary about this is that it was very well organized. This was not
Yeah,
a when you said the traveling magician, I'd immediately thought of like Gacy dressing up as a clown and
right.
luring people that way. Eh, And I think people can grasp that idea of that or these pedophiles that get into Boy Scouts or become priests or become teachers
Hmm.
because they know that these are easy areas to access children or become
Right.
coaches of some sort, right?
Right.
But this
Teachers
is
not so much, but the Boy Scouts and religious organizations most definitely. For the longest time, the Boy Scouts, they would move problem scout leaders around, much like parish priests were moved around that had issues,
right.
and there wasn't any real qualifications or checkup or background checks or anything for someone to be a scout leader. So the pederasts, and like as a definitional thing, a pedophile is someone who deals with a younger child. A pederast is someone is who is preying on uh, uh, adolescent boys. And so, and we'll use the term interchangeably just so everyone knows when we're talking what that means. And so, they would tend to gravitate toward these jobs and these volunteer positions that gave them access.
So are they recruiting some of these predators, I'll call them, eh, the adult predators to this island as well? Are they keeping as staff members, for example?
No, so there wasn't really a staff there. There was Sheldon built a camp, cut an airstrip into the island, and then he would largely shepherd people out there, or people that or other wealthy individuals with planes. It would be a place to go. So it wasn't an organized thing where they would just have a rotation and a staff and things like that. It just happened to be an incredibly secluded place that, under the auspices of the of Brother Paul's mission, there where they could bring uh, young boys when they needed to. And the commerce aspect of it is in the production of the child sexual assault material. So there's lots in all the films and the photographs. Those were also being sold through the classified ads and in this huge newsletter and magazine network. It was all U.S. mail, of course, because it's pre-internet. The internet has vastly changed that, and you're seeing the same basic network just via email, file sharing.
Right. Yeah, and I can see of how well, now it's well known that there's a dark web that you can
Mhm.
buy stuff on, and now with social media and other apps that I don't even wanna mention, it's easy to send files to people or pictures to people that either delete right away after they get sent
Right.
or have some type of encryption into them or built into the app itself. And law enforcement nowadays has to try to keep up and learn about these
Mhm.
new things and find solutions to them over and over. But what you are talking about is actual physical copies of your going
Correct.
to the store, and the guy that's working there figures out that what you're interested in is illegal essentially, but
Mhm.
they've got a method to be able to share it.
Yeah, they do, it's really in that magazine network. So that Better Life Monthly, it was an incredibly large network. It's the Man Boy Love Association, and they would meet regularly and elect officers for the organization. It was that organized, but the practitioners would utilize those classified ads. And so Richards, the only person arrested from all of this was Richards, the school teacher. So the wealthy elite got away, of course, much like we're seeing with the Epstein and Maxwell stuff.
Right.
But Richards did go to jail. He was arrested, after some kids testified and they found out about the island. The island was shut down. The island is currently owned by the state of Michigan. It's accessible. You can fly out there. It's apparently overrun with snakes. So there's a nice metaphor for everyone right there.
Huh.
But Richards did go to prison. He was sentenced to, I believe, 7 to 12 years or 2 to 12 years, something like that. But he agreed to testify to Congress because Congress was holding hearings on these large pedophile networks. So when he testified to Congress, his sentence was commuted, and he was let go after maybe 2 years, and he died of old age in Michigan in the 1990s.
And during that deposition, that's when he actually made a hand drawing
Right.
of the
Yeah.
network.
The diagram of how the network works, and it's incredibly detailed, and it looks if anyone wants to read the article, I'm sure you'll post a link to it. But
Yes.
we've got a copy or an image of the diagram in there, and it looks like a incredibly detailed flow chart. Like any kind of logistics sort of thing. Like if you were trying to ship diamonds, mine diamonds, and ship diamonds across the country, then you would have the same example of a flow chart and shipping and logistics, and they do the same thing for this child sexual assault material. And so when uh, s- a couple of suspects were looked at in the Oakland County Child Killer case in Michigan, they found a great deal of this child sexual assault material with them, and that sort of backtracked into how that came to be, and that's really when the light was shown on Sheldon's operation.
And you mentioned this before, but Sheldon, he fled to the Netherlands.
Yeah,
And
but he fled to the Netherlands. He was never prosecuted for it. There was one other person who was looked at who got away. Let's see here. Richards was arrested. Sheldon got away. There we are. A man named Grossman, who was actually the point person for the Tennessee camp. He was declared a fugitive and apparently went, they believe, to California and just kind of dropped off. So,
in what sparked the actual investigation? When did the feds or local law enforcement actually find out about this?
so that's when it really came through Richards, as Richards was trying to recruit these boys. Their parents and or their foster parents or whomever, well, were noticing the uh, different issues. And then Richards was busted for a large cachet of the child sexual assault material that he was producing as well. So not just on the island, but he was engaging in photo shoots in the Lower Peninsula in Michigan, and recruiting and sending items through the mail there. So it was largely the sexual assault material that got Richards arrested, and then Richards turned on everyone else. Although chances are Richards gave Sheldon and Grossman the heads up, and they, of course, both being wealthy, had the means to simply disappear.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. And I'm sure that we're talking about in the 70s when this is occurring, right?
Right, right, mid
So
'70s.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that federal law enforcement is not at the capacity that it is now, where they're investigating. Now they've got postal inspectors that are federal
Mhm.
agents that would work crimes like this and have people that are tipping them off that this type of stuff is coming through the mail and whatnot. I'm sure that you don't have that in the 70s.
I'm sure.
But
I think there was a postal inspector in the '70s, and I think that was part of how Richards got busted. But
okay.
but you don't have digital tracking. You can't see when someone flies somewhere, especially if they're incredibly wealthy and they have their own plane. We didn't have those kind of regulations, and if someone felt like disappearing, you could simply just go to California and say you had a different name, and you would get employed, and you wouldn't need the social security card, and you wouldn't need to do the background check. It was an analog age.
Yeah, and when you look at that time, like you're saying, even up until Hell, I remember being in high school and guys used to get fake IDs from Florida
Hmm.
because they were black and white still.
Yep.
And this is before the scanning barcode on the back and all that. And so they could make one that looked pretty good and,
Right.
go buy beer and whatnot. So I'm sure if you have money, you
It's
can
even
make one
easier.
even better, right?
Right. Or just buy a building and then go live in it in the Netherlands.
Right.
It's astounding. I mean, we see the parallels with Epstein right now, wherein like the low level person's the only person that's been arrested. Out of this with the Epstein stuff, out of whoever's involved, whether whatever levels of political or social power ever these people have, the only person that's in jail right now is the woman that was recruiting. So it's kind of like the Richards parallel. So Richards was the only one that did time. Richards gave everybody up. Maxwell gave everybody up. Richards decided to talk to Congress and was commuted. Maxwell just talked to one of the AGs and got a really nice sell and a puppy. So it people are aghast at these things, and it's terrible that these things happen. But it's really hard to comport the distinct lack of desire for people to get prosecuted for this stuff. That's what I don't my connectivity. So there wasn't a huge effort made to find Sheldon. Grossman disappears in the wind, and if someone talks to Congress, the person recruiting children for terrible things who's been convicted, and they talk to Congress and they give a statement and an interview, and then they're sent to this community, they get to go live their lives. That's
Right.
it's there's not much has changed in my opinion. Not much has changed at all.
Yeah, and sadly, even with Epstein and the list, and now that you've got the Iran war going on and other headlines, it's kind of taken a back seat, and people have
Mhm.
forgotten that there's millions of files that have been released but haven't been put out publicly, and I'm sure that there are thousands and thousands of names that have not been released that he's had contact with.
Sure.
A and I'm not saying that every person that he had contact with is guilty of harming children, but I do think that it is odd that you've got someone that is in these political circles on both sides, to be fair,
Mhm.
Democrat and Republican. He's friends with both, which also makes me question how that became so and who he really is. But you've got someone
Well,
like that, he's playing both teams,
mhm.
and I think he's probably got people that he's working with on both sides, and conveniently, these names are not coming out, right?
Right. So, but some have now. It's important to remember that when Epstein started all of this thing, much like Sheldon, we don't ascribe uh, uh, criminal activity to a political party either. So, and this is before it was team versus team like it is now. So, we tend to make the mistake of thinking like it's always been Democrat versus Republican, and it used to be just varying degrees of friendly disagreements about
Right.
policy. So the fact that the man had friends, rich people are rich people. The wealthy are wealthy. The Epstein class is the Epstein class, regardless of political affiliation. And I think that's the thing that we need to pay attention to, because it's the wealth and the privilege that allowed Sheldon and Epstein to get away, and Richards to be, in jail for 2 years.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, and you're absolutely right that not to make this political, but there really isn't a centrist anymore where people would actually be known to work with the other side back and
Mhm.
forth and make compromises. I agree with you on that, and I also agree that, right, this is about wealth and privilege and being able to use those resources to essentially do what you want. And then,
Right,
instead of accepting responsibility, you just go to another country on your private plane.
right. Or you just scuttle it all and you shut it all down,
Yeah.
and you pay to have it taken away. Um, It's an interesting thing. So when we talk about and the term Epstein class is very new, but of course, but it kind of explains that high level of wealth and privilege, and the psychology attached to that is interesting too. So if someone um, has everything, almost literally everything, then they're not getting excited and they're not getting motivated and they're not getting enthralled and passionate about the same things over and over again because they can have whatever they want. They don't have to work toward it, for example, or they could just go buy it if they really felt like it. So that's missing. So many researchers think that like this the taboo and the terrible things, that's that next level of vicarious thrill that they can't get from normal stuff like you and I would have.
Right. And that makes this is a little off subject, but just to bring in another example of this, did you hear about what Vince McMahon was getting
Mhm.
sued over about going to the bathroom on it was these very extreme. I think they're past the point of being sexual because I don't see how you find that stuff sexual, but essentially he was having these women over that he was very abusive to them. He was giving them a
Mhm.
lot of money, but he would do extremely degrading and gross things to them. Stuff that I would get kicked off YouTube for saying. I'll leave it at that. And
Yep, 100%.
I think that that's kind of, excuse me, that's a good parallel for what's happening
Mhm.
with these predators is that when you come from wealth, it's like, okay, let's see what's the next thing. It's almost like a
Right.
drug addict wanting to chase another high, right?
Yeah, it is. I would think so. You know, there's one way your endorphins are firing, and whatever you think about, you know, Epstein himself, whoever he worked for, or whatever, you know, the ultimate end result of this was. uh, you know, because plenty of theories out there. At the end of the day, his clientele were made up of incredibly wealthy people, and they engaged in things that normal, average, everyday persons would, you know, be in jail for forever, and due simply to wealth and privilege, they had access, and they also had the means to avoid punishment or avoid scrutiny.
Yeah. I wanted to hit some more on, or if you can provide some more detail about this Oakland County child killer connection.
Mhm.
So, can you tell me of how many, was it four kids that were
It's four kids,
killed?
right?
Okay.
And
And
so the
when did
Oakland
this all start?
This started in 1976. It went between 1976 and 1977, and there were four confirmed victims in the Oakland County area. Of course, so hence the Oakland County Child Killer. And when you're in Michigan, that's just outside Detroit. So it's like Royal Oak and Ferndale. Um, and there was four, excuse me, four canonical victims. There's Mark Stebbins, Jill Robinson, Christine Mihalik, and Timothy King, and they were, you know, varied between 10 years old and 12 years old in there. Each of them were abducted. They were held for a number of days, the longest being 19, I believe. And when their bodies were found, they had been fed and they were cleaned and groomed and then discarded. So, you know, the one of the theories, the prevailing theories was that whomever the County Child Killer was utilizing the children for some sexual assault materials, videos, or not video at the time, it'd be films, photos, other things like that. And when there was a suspect that was arrested, what's his name? Christopher something. I'm looking at my notes here. So when he was arrested, the person he was arrested with said that he was the Oakland County Child Killer. So they, of course, law enforcement went and looked at his home, and they found a ton of the child sexual assault materials. Some of it may have possibly been from Fox Island, but this is all happening concurrently here. So the correlation was made, uh, and the one of the prevailing theories was that the the child killer was multiple people, since our victims varied, right? You don't generally see young boys and young girls in the same victim pool. They were all asphyxiated and strangled, except for one. One of the young girls was shot in the face and then discarded. There was very little forensic evidence. There was a dog hair that tied together three of the victims, and there was something else that tied the other victim together. But since there was such a variance in victimology, the one of those theories was these children were being abducted for the child sexual assault materials, as opposed to a single predator with a very specific victim type.
So, do they think that the people that were responsible for murdering these children, did they work for this larger network, or do you think they were just doing it on their own? Is there any
I mean,
thoughts behind that?
I'm not sure if I buy into that they were being utilized for these materials or not. I've tried to think through this. It's a long time ago with very few leads. Nothing concrete has ever tied the island to these children.
Okay.
So that really hasn't happened. And the two girls weren't the type of victim that the island would actually utilize. So, and this network, I don't want to call this like a network of uh, people working all in unison. It was this incredibly large network of like a fan network essentially. And with the Man Boy Love Association, providing like a central clearinghouse for information, if that makes sense.
It does. So people would find the ad or contact information to be able almost like subscribe to a magazine.
Yeah, exactly. Or a newsletter, and like these ads would have the code words that you're looking for. This. Oh, I know what that means, and so that would be something someone would respond to, and that's how Sheldon and Richards got together. As I believe Richards was advertising for his magic show in this very unique way to get someone like Sheldon's attention.
And are they making any money off this, or is this a monetary gain
Oh yeah,
as
there's money.
well?
Yeah, there is a monetary gain. Of course, you're dealing in illegal things, and illegal things are expensive to the people that want them very, very much. And so when Richards in his testimony, and I highly recommend. So in the article, we link to the testimony itself. You can read it. It was published by Congress, and he talks about how lucrative it could be. And he started with just pictures, and they weren't even sexual pictures. They were just a boy with his shirt off running. I mean, they were sexual to the people buying them, of course, but not for the
Right.
victim. And then, of course, as requests would come in, they would start to take requests for very specific things, and you would charge more for the very specific things. The island, in and of itself, is an incredibly very specific thing that costs a great deal of money to go to. So, if you knew Frank Sheldon and you wanted to go to the island and experience what he had at the island, you were going to pay for it to
Do you know how
Sheldon.
much that was?
No, that I don't think that's ever been disclosed.
Okay. Yeah, it's such a fascinating story that this was in the 70s.
Mhm.
I feel like it was underreported, or people
Was
are not talking about it
was
today,
actively
at
covered
least.
up after. And so it really it was kind of shelved. And even if you do an internet search of North Fox Island right now, you're going to hit the top 10 or 20 are going to be the state owned. Here's North Fox Island, beautiful, outside of Traverse City, Michigan. It's part of a state conservatory at this point. So there's some things because they own it, of course they're going to utilize it.
Right.
But it, at the time, just like now, most people don't want to talk about it. It's not a topic that people want to discuss, and that kind of aids in letting it kind of slip away, and no one feeling like they want to discuss these things anymore. So North Fox Island, it hit the rounds in the newspapers for a bit. Not much was made about Richard's testimony, and the commutation of the sentence you can find nothing on. He just happens to end up in Michigan right after the deposition or the interview, and just lives his life away.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and again, it's because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Like you said, you can't even say what we can't say what happened on that island on YouTube. It'll get shut down,
Right.
banned, and if we can't
And I'm
say
not
it,
joking about that either.
no, I know you're not.
YouTube and TikTok's the worst. If you say, on TikTok, you have to say unalived and all those
Hmm.
type of things. And even on YouTube, they do it a lot, unless it's true crime, which mine is, and I refuse to say that. So I call it what it is.
Right. Yeah, you can't say the if you say forced sexual relations and everything like that. So even in our modern 2026 algorithms, we're not allowed to talk about it either. And if one is into the idea of the giant Epstein class conspiracy, we know the level of person that owns these platforms, and do they not want us to talk about it? I'm
Yeah.
not one for conspiracy theories myself, but this has gone on for a couple thousand years of wealthy, privileged men and sometimes women uh, being able to do whatever they want and essentially getting away with it. And again, we're seeing it in real time right now with millions of files, including video and pictures and all kinds of things that are just not coming out. There's not even close to that many items in the North Fox Island investigation, I would assume. I mean, that was just this one small, tiny island as a boys' camp, and that was easy to scuttle. And I mean, this is proving Epstein's proving a little more difficult to scuttle, but we have to ask ourselves, how come we're not being allowed to look at that information? You did the show on Nancy Guthrie. Nancy Guthrie, that was just one of those diversions as well. Like we said before, if it was an older black grandmother or a poor white aunt from West Virginia, no one would care.
Oh,
It wouldn't be
absolutely.
on the rounds.
And I completely agree. And that's why I try to find some cases that are not getting the attention that they need. I've talked about Matthew McDonald, who's a missing
Mhm.
person in California, Pennsylvania. Uh, his sister Sam has been doing her best to get the word out about his disappearance. And it's one of those things, too, that it is so incredibly hard to get the story out, because she even got kicked off TikTok for saying the wrong word while she's talking about her murdered brother. He's a
Mhm.
missing person, but we are pretty sure that he's been murdered. And she was blunt about that and got kicked off, lost all her followers, had to rebuild. And that's what makes these situations so hard.
It
Because
is.
when you're trying to do the right thing and calling these people out and exposing what's going on, you've got censorship that's just, you're constantly battling.
It's true. And what class? What is who's deciding what's being censored too? But
Right.
that's kind of the thing. Like most of our media is owned under a couple of different organizations now, soon to be one massive, legacy broadcast media organization. Our social media platforms are policed and throttled when you're trying to talk about certain things. So what are we left with? We can only make one assumption, and that one assumption is, okay, someone either involved with this or complicit or in the same class of people that don't want other things involved are actively putting these chokeholds and these parameters on.
Yeah. And I've heard their defense of that. In reality, these are AI programs that they are using to filter through all this information. And they either have to they're trying to protect kids by um, essentially dialing it up, where they're searching for these keywords. And when they get flagged, they believe that it's inappropriate and you get booted off. But there's got to be some type of appeal process where you are not kicking off someone that's trying to get information out about a missing person or an unsolved crime or bringing to light tragedies like this.
Um, that's under the assumption that people care, not your viewers, of course, not people
Right.
searching for it, but the platform owners.
And I'm sure that they will care when enough people care. If something gets enough attention, they will absolutely care, right? Like Nancy
Theoretically,
Guthrie, people were talking about that so much. I'm sure you could get away with more with that than other things.
it's possible, but I mean, or is Nancy Guthrie the designated diversion?
There's all
That's
types of
the that's
theories, and we
just the
talked a bit
discussion of it.
about this before, but when people told me about this island that the Jeffrey Epstein Island,
Mhm.
it was about 10 years ago, I believe, on Joe Rogan, I was hearing about it, and I thought, "No way. There's no way that this is going on. Maybe some rich dude has this, and he's bringing some kids there and a few friends." But I don't buy the whole world leaders and top businessmen coming and just how big it really was. And then it actually happened. And so
Mhm.
when people told me that, you know what, he didn't kill himself, it's like, okay, uh, you know what,
I don't think
actually,
so.
I don't think he did either. And then
I
when
mean,
people said he's still alive, I thought, you know, I, I I would not doubt it.
uh, anything's possible at this point.
Yeah.
Absolutely anything's possible.
When you
The fact
look
that
at the
we'll never
level
know, though, that's the sad part.
is what?
We'll never know.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
We'll never be able to get a truthful accounting from anyone involved with it, because the people that are involved, at the highest levels, run pretty much everything.
Yeah,
At
and
least in the U.S., we're seeing
right.
some movement in larger names and important political and business names in Europe and South America taking some heat for this and losing positions and possibly going to jail. But I don't think we'll ever see that in the United States. It's not who we are anymore, which is sad.
Right. And with this, you've got the political pressure, you've got the very big CEOs, like Bill Gates, for example. I remember
Mhm.
when his name was exposed, Microsoft dropped right away. And I'm sure that with politicians, that's one of the things that they're probably afraid of too, that when these names come out and people make these assumptions, it's going to hurt the stock market. And I'm not saying that that should prevent them, but I'm sure that that may be part of the thought process.
Oh,
I
sure,
really think
sure it
that
is.
they're all just guilty of being associated with this guy, and they knew more than what they're actually letting on to.
I mean, I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, I see a certain level of person just flying out there and having a party. Sure, because you're
Right.
rich. This could be thing, but I don't think anyone doesn't know something weird is happening. These are all None of these people are stupid. This is not a group of individuals that are very obtuse, and repeated visits to that island. I mean, to the highest levels. I think we're at here, and it's easy to get throttled though. I know of a personal experience. There's a TikTok thing I did, and there was an ice joke that was made in it after he just sold to somebody. Was it Ellison bought TikTok? I think something like that, and made an ice joke. And normally they would get 300, 400 videos views on a video, and it went down to one. They re-edited it, took the ice joke out, and it went right back up to where it should
Right.
be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I've gotta be careful with the YouTube shorts and titles and what you put in descriptions because one word, it will dramatically affect how many views you get. I mean, some
Right.
of them just don't go anywhere if you've got a title that YouTube deems as, offensive.
So if we can reject the idea that the people that design these and the platform owners don't really care what children find online because they don't really care about children in general. It's as we can see from what we've allowed to happen in the United States, then we have to make the assumption that this is a class of people where regular laws and regular rules don't apply,
Right.
and all bets are off at that point. Since right now, if we're talking about higher level politicians, if higher level politicians are blocking access to the Epstein files, they're the ones like voting and deciding on the rules for the Epstein files. Those right? It's
Right.
just it's a just direct conflict of interest, but it doesn't apply to them, and it never has for 2,000 years. It didn't apply to Frank Sheldon. Didn't apply to Grossman, and it only barely applied to Richards in his very brief prison stint, as far as Michigan's concerned.
Yeah, and that's always the case with Congress. It's like once you get into the club is going to look out for each other. So when it comes to things that both sides do, like take advantage of their position to buy stocks and make
Mhm.
trades, and you come into Congress making what, 200 grand, and then you're worth 20 million in no time. And that's on both sides.
Mhm.
There are Democrats and Republicans. Dan Crenshaw, he went from making a couple 100,000 to, I believe, last time I saw, he's worth 26 million. Nancy Pelosi, she's got an app that someone made that tracks her
Mhm.
trades because she was making so much money. I mean,
Yeah.
again, not to make this political, they're both doing it. This is not about Democrat and Republican. This is about who has money, who has power and privilege, and how, when they get into these spots into society, they completely take advantage of it. And they expect us just to follow these rules, you know?
And we largely do, and that's so there's actually groups of people that will cheer on um these people for their well, they should make the money while they can, because the average person doesn't really realize what uh is they don't have the experiences that the incredibly elite and the incredibly wealthy do. I mean, like, we don't, you and I don't, of course. And the idea that um we take our moral values and we take our, like, if I have a chance to make an extra a quick buck, I'm going to take it because I need it to feed my family. That isn't the same concept and precept that these people are working under, but we're putting our belief systems on them, the average person, and because that's the only ones we have. So we think that they're doing the same things for the same reasons we are, and they're actually not.
Right.
I'm not quite sure what they are because I'm not there, but but I know it's
Maybe
not.
one day.
Well, I doubt it. That ship has sailed. But at the end of the day, we have this huge. I mean, if there was a Sheldon list, no one was prosecuted from the Sheldon list. If there was a list of clients,
And I'm sure there
or came out.
was.
I'm sure there was. I mean,
They had to have
there's
some type of subscription list if they're
there's a
sending
mailing
out
list
flyers.
somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
Or you would multiple orders would come through. You'd have to know where to mail the photos and the films that someone wanted. So there had to be a thing, and that's never been explored either, if it still exists at all. So we're seeing the same things over and over and over again. North Fox Island was the microcosm of this, and like you said, I mean, if you appear in these files somewhere, at the very least, you need to be interviewed. I don't care
Absolutely.
if you're the president. I don't care if you're a congressperson. I don't care if you own Microsoft. I do not care. We had an ex-president and ex-first lady come in and get questioned. Why
Yeah.
can't everyone come in?
You know what's so laughable about that is that, it's a red flag when Trump is defending Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. I mean, that's when you know that shady shit is going on.
And it's
And I'm
it's
not saying that either one of them did anything.
mhm.
I don't know, but that is shady. And I definitely think that they know more than they're letting on to. And whatever their involvement is, or their relationship with Epstein is, it's got to be, you've got to have a strong reason to pull a 180 of how you're treating someone. And
Mhm.
I don't buy it of, oh, this is an ex-president, we should be treating him with respect. Like, please. That's I
Or
don't
a
know.
current
I don't
president. I don't feel like treating him with respect either. If you're in there, let's talk to you about it. Let's find out. Find out what you know.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
I
at the very
completely
least,
agree.
everyone could be a material witness to something.
Right.
At the very least, but here I think there's a lots of behavioral things that get people pitted against one another. And if we can all think about the idea that once we get beyond our level of us versus them tribalism, like Democrats versus Republicans, at our level, when you get to that class of people, the tribalism goes away. They're all the same, and they're in the same social circles. They're all in the same groups,
Right.
and so they don't sit at home complaining about what Democrats and libtards do and what maggots do. They this is not the class isn't it. That's for us. That's the job they give us, so we can keep fighting and making them money. They don't care. It was Trump all of a sudden nice to Bill Clinton? No, they've been friends for years. They were friends for decades, and then you have a feud, and you want people to do what you want them to do. Well, okay, let's put this fight together, and we'll have this adversarial position here, and it's easy. I can get you to do what I want you to do if I can find a common villain for you. I give you
Right.
that villain, you hit him, because we treat our politics like sports now, and it didn't used to be like that, but it's like that now. But that Epstein class does not treat politics like sports. They're all in the same group.
Right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you bringing this to light, and I know that this is going to be something that we're just going to have to keep on talking about and try to
Yeah,
make as many people aware of this as we can.
right. I mean, it's easier to get. I'm going to say get away with it. It's not. That's not what I mean, though. It's easier for us to talk about things from the past, like North Fox Island and Sheldon, and then make the connections to today, because that seems to be an easier thing. Like many people can think, "Oh, that was then." We're so much more different now, and you could get them into the conversation by talking about this historical, essentially a true crime,
Right.
a perversion of justice, really, and then make those correlations as we move through. Because, like you said, this is 1975. That's 50 years ago. 50 years before that, I'm sure there was something happening that 1925, 50 years before that. This goes back to ancient times, where wealth and privilege cover up incredibly horrible deeds, largely, centered around pedophiles and pederasts. That's nothing that's changed. But technology's changed, and that's about it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is going to continue to happen. That's just
Unless we're, you're right in the sense that we just have to talk about it more. Because the more we talk about it, the more light gets shown on it. And when you shine lights on things, then they tend to, scramble for the dark.
well, to bring some light into such a dark conversation. Maybe this is something that will bind or bring people together. Something we can all agree on both sides of the aisle is that people that abuse children should be brought to light
Hmm.
and should be investigated. And
I
hopefully
think
that's
every
something we can all agree on.
I think everyone will agree on that. What they are having an issue agreeing on now is whether or not their team actually participated or not. And we have to get away from the tribalism. That's what
Right.
has to happen. If there is a tribal thing, if there's an us versus them, it's people in our tax bracket versus people in a higher tax bracket. That's the one true thing, because it's the wealth and the privilege that it's in this mess right now. It wasn't the ex cop and the guy that teaches flying out to the island and doing terrible things. It was wealth and privilege, and that's who needs to be held accountable.
Well said. Well, David, thank you again for coming on. How can we support you? Where can we find the article?
You can find the article. It's at michiganadvance.com. It was picked up by MSN and some other places as well, so you can find it. You can just search me there. Or you can go to my site, hayescriminology.com, and click on media, and everything's updated there.
All right. Well, we will put links to that in the show notes. If you want to support me, you can start off by liking and subscribing to Santana True Crime. You can also check out my other show with Kelly Brink. It's called The Disclosure Lounge, where we talk about conspiracies, UFOs, a lot of fun stuff. And you can buy my book, A Murder on Campus, The Professor, the Cop, and North Carolina's Most Notorious Cold Case. I did that with my brother, Dr. Brian Santana. That is about the murder of Virginia Olsen on the campus of UNC Asheville, which is still a cold case, even though we know who did it. That's in our wealth and privilege thing. They've not.
Imagine that.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to say the name. Screw it. His name is John Rivas Jr. And we believe that he murdered Virginia Olsen and a guy named James Gore as well. We believe he was morally responsible and there that day. But pick up the book anyway. And
Should have said spoiler alert. Spoiler
they're
alert.
both dead. So we're not going to be able to get justice. We were not able to name them in the book because we received some information afterwards. But if you want to support me, please pick it up. Either way, please remember Virginia and all the air victims out there that their case has not been solved. David, thank you again and good night.